So starting with you, Prasanna, I need to introduce you, but let me ask you questions. Where are you hailing from, and what is your basic background, education, etc.?
Well, I hail from Mortua, like you, in your same neighborhood. And yeah, about my education, my primary education was at St. Thomas's College, and for my A-levels, I joined Royal College. And thereafter, I graduated in medicine from North Columba Medical College, and thereafter I did a couple of postgraduate degrees in medicine, rather in public health, and also in sociology and economics. So I have worked in various fields in the health ministry, and thereafter as a lecturer in the medical faculty, and thereafter in a couple of international organizations. And apart from that, I have been a writer for the past 20 years, and I have been writing my regular pages, mainly
Let
in the...
Let me stop you there, because let's come to that in a minute. So you went to medical school, and what was your first interest? Because before getting into the environmental arena, you would have other interests. So what was your first interest in medical field?
Yeah, if you ask me, I would say my first interest in medical field.
In the medical field, yeah. Let's start.
Well, in medicine, what I selected to do postgraduate was in community medicine. So I think, basically I had a liking towards the social side of medicine. So I think, right along my first love had been for social sciences and literature. So that I wanted to, try out the pursue same things in medical field as well. So yeah, okay. So which I did to some extent, I think, yeah.
Right. And then how did you diversify? Because I know that you have loads of other things which you have started to do and you are doing. At what point in your medical career you thought of diversifying and getting into journalism and various other things you do now?
Yeah, I think, it happened quite early in my career, because I think now one good eye-opener for me was I joined the military quite early in my career. That as a volunteer officer, I joined the Navy, and that helped me go to many places which, the ordinary people would not be able to go those days. So I was, basically serving the Northern and East Theater. And actually, I got, a lot of opportunity to interact with ordinary people, because those days in those areas, the health services were carried out, at least, the areas that I was in were carried out by the forces. So irrespective of the forces officers or the civilians, the health services were carried out by the forces. So that gave me a grand opportunity to interact with people, and especially these were the people from, very difficult backgrounds. And also the life was very difficult then, because I remember when I was working in the Jaffna Peninsula, our main mode of travel was boat. So we were going from, one island to the other from the boat, and, conducting our clinics. And that was a That was a hard time, but also a very, very, very good time, a time that you would never forget. And similarly, my in the public sector, my activities were mainly in Colonado district. I have worked as a what do you call, medical officer of health, and also as a regional epidemiologist, and that again gave me a lot of opportunity to travel around and see places, and see some very unfamiliar places, to explore bits of history, bits of culture, and interact with various kinds of people, including sometimes even Adivasis. Yeah, that does, yeah. So actually, only then I realized that there were various other clans apart from the Nilgala, Ratugala, and this Mahayangana area. Vedas, there are other clans. I came across such in areas like Ratmale and Maharatmale, and such places. So I mean, so I think basically that was a nice experience, and I'm quite happy that I was able to experience those things quite early in my career.
Yeah.
And thereafter I joined the medical faculty. Yes, and yeah, that's how it went on. Yeah.
So it's very clear that you have done your walks throughout the country, very well familiar with that. And I know that you are a very good journalist and you have won awards. Could you kindly summarize your journalistic achievements, please?
Yeah, well, I think, my journalism career spans back for over 20 years. So I have basically, I have been a journalist for the Island newspaper, actually, who introduced me to journalism is Mr. Pradopad Sahabandhu, who is the present editor of the Island newspaper. That time, he was I mean, he would have been a reporter. But we were in the same class in sociology. So our interactions in sociology and in writing, that perhaps encouraged him to invite me to the field of journalism, and yeah, and ever since I have been writing on and off. Yeah.
Wonderful to hear that. And then I believe, in addition to all of that, you did some studies in Buddhism. Just roughly tell us what that is.
Yes, I followed a course in Buddhism, a master's course. That's yeah, that is called a master's in Buddhist studies. Yeah.
Right.
So which I still continue
with
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
For the people who don't know, Prasanna is my cousin, and both of us went to the same Sunday school. Both of us are Christians, or born Christians, as we say. Prasanna was having a Methodist background, and I was having a Church of England background. But now both of us are probably studying Buddhism rather than the Christianity. So that's just one information. And then Prasanna, just very briefly tell us about your political career.
Well, about my political career, I think, for one to get into politics, I think, by nature, likely that, he or she is a kind of a political being. So the interest in politics was there for a long time. And again, you saw, I mean, things are not getting better in our part of the world, and especially, I mean, what concerns most is your own country. The things are not getting better, and day by day the things are getting worse. So I think, more or less it's a case where, you can't keep silent. You got to, get involved with these things. And actually, that's the feeling that, I would say that got me into politics. And yeah, that again, for almost 2 decades, I was involved in politics. And again, I would say, my brand of politics is not popular politics. I mean, I was never with any of these major political parties. And actually, we were always in the opposition, and I mean, we would be, most of the times we would be opposing what the mainstream politicians do. And in fact, I would consider, I mean, I am a pioneering member of the Green Party of Sri Lanka. So we are the people, who brought in environmental politics into Sri Lankan political scene. And actually, I think I personally took a very decisive step in the last general election, where there again, with a less known party, Jatika Sanvardhana Peramuna, or National Development Front, we contested 7 districts in the country.
And that includes you. You were campaigning.
Yeah, I represented the Colombo district.
Thank you very much. And just before we allow you to start your presentation, just tell us about your liaisons with Professor Carlo Fonseca, please.
Well, I mean, I'm so proud, and I would say, I'm very privileged to be very close to my dear teacher, Professor Carlo Fonseca. Actually, my close association with him happened through our working together in the NATA. NATA is for National Authority on Tobacco and Alcohol, and actually he was the first chairman of the NATA. And in fact, when he was made the chairman, he invited me to join the NATA as the manager. And I, at that time, I could join with him, and I think it was a fantastic time, to be with that great man, because involving in tobacco and alcohol control is one thing, and associating him and listening to his stories and making discussions and debates, and that was a super experience, and I always consider him as one of my great mentors.
Thank you very much, Prasanna, for that introduction. And I have seen how your thoughts and philosophies have developed with the association with Carlo. So this is the time you need to now start your presentation.
Well, at the very outset, I have to tell you that, with a bit of, in a bit of a difficult environment, I am made to this do this presentation, because still, there is no power supply here. Anyhow, I hope, during the course of our discussion, the power will come back. Okay. So, yeah, good evening, good afternoon, and good evening. And if there are people from US or Canada, good morning to everybody. I will be talking mainly on this book by me, titled "Politics of a Rainforest: Battles to Save Sinharaja." Following after the launching of this book, there was a request from the public to translate this into Sinhala, which I have done, and in fact, the Sinhala version of this title, Vasi Vanantarayaka Deshapalanaya Sinharaja Surakime Satan, would be launched in 4 days from today, on 17th this month, in Deniaya, in the foothills of Sinharaja. So, about the book, as the title implies, it would mainly be on the politics of Sinharaja and not so much on biology of Sinharaja. So that much, I have to tell you at the very beginning. And a brief introduction to the structure of the book. The book consists of 2 sections. One, the chapters, the other being the annexures. The annexures are also, more or less chapters, but, the one difference is the chapters are mainly written by me, except one. There are 10 chapters altogether, all are by me, and majority of those are which have been published before, either in the island newspaper or in another web magazine called counterpoint.lk. And the annexures, there are 5 in number, and 2 are again written by me. One is on Vilpattu and other on Irangani Serasinga. Anyhow, I will come to that later. And between these 2 sections or rather, there are 16 beautiful pictures provided by one Mr. Rudy De Bruyn. And De Bruyn is a famous ornithologist and a wildlife photographer. He's from Belgium, and this gentleman is especially important here. And again, he's an important person to our country, because he's the guy, who busted a very famous, or rather infamous, biopiracy racket in a place close to Sinharaja called Kudava. So, in fact, I have gathered first-hand information from him, and there is a chapter done on that as well, on the biopiracy aspect of Sri Lanka. And coming back to the book, it has 10 chapters, all but one were scripted by me, and they cover various areas such as basically, the destruction going on in Sinharaja in the guise of tourism development or tea plantations, biopiracy, and also the political movement to conserve Sinharaja, indigenous knowledge of Sinharaja, likewise. And there is one chapter done by 2 very important persons in Sri Lanka. I think, they are involved in this discussion as well. 2 very prominent activists in Sri Lanka. One is Mr. Sajiva Chamikara, and the other Mr. Dulan Ranga Vidanapatirana, 2 young men who are, about whom we could be very happy and proud of, and who are doing a very important year-long service in the conservation of Sinharaja. And Dulan is, apart from an activist, he's also a herpetologist, and he is involved with his colleague, Mr. Mendis Wickramasinghe, in discovery of new species. And in fact, Dulan with Mr. Wickramasinghe till now had discovered around 20 new species to science, mainly in the Sinharaja region. And and about the annexure section, there are two articles written by me, one on the Wilpattu destruction, and other on Irangani Serasinghe. And you may wonder why on Wilpattu, because that again, another very important issue that cropped up almost simultaneously with the Sinharaja issue in Sri Lanka. Well, I mean, the electricity came, so we are in a better footing. Okay, so and also the Wilpattu, there was a long dragging court case filed on the Wilpattu issue, and its verdict came at a time, when I was penning this book. So I included a chapter on this also. And again, on Mrs. Serasinghe, just a word about her. I mean, all of you may be knowing Irangani Serasinghe very well. I mean, basically as a theater and cinema artist. But apart from that, she's a leading environmentalist, and also I would say a pioneering environmentalist of our country, who with a few of her colleagues, I would say, who created the environment movement in this country, who were responsible in beginning the environmental activism in this country. So we would be, well, I mean, there's one full chapter about her. And also in the annex section, there is an article by taxonomist Mr. Rohan Petiogoda on Thilo Hoffman. And Thilo again is another important figure in Sri Lankan environmental movement. He's a Swiss national who lived in Sri Lanka for over 6 decades, who made Sri Lanka his second home, and he provided leadership to many environmental battles from front. And among the other two articles, there is one which is a list of bioproducts that were smuggled from the Indian subcontinent, including Sri Lanka, and patented elsewhere. And this article is written by a gentleman called Mr. Kusal Kavinda Amarasinghe, who is an attorney at law as well, and also another article which is from Earth Journalism Network, which again is an international environmental organization, mainly mainly it's a media organization. I think it has its headquarters in London, and it speaks about few of Sri Lanka's success stories on preventing deforestation. So that's about the book, the structure of the book in general. And
Prasanna, I'm
yes.
not quite sure whether you intend to move your PowerPoint slides or not. But
yeah. Yes, very soon we'll be, going to the next slide. Yeah, very soon, because till now I was, giving a brief introduction to the book. Yeah, and next slide, Yes, sir, Pravi. Right. Okay. So, yeah. So I think, again, whatever it is, before getting on with the politics of Sinharaja, which is the gist of this book, I think it's my duty to give you at least a snapshot view of the ecological importance of Sinharaja. And as I think many of you may be keen to know what it looks like today. So, yeah, about Sinharaja, the Sinharaja Mahakale, as it is called, or the Sinharaja World Heritage Site, is the largest remaining lowland wet evergreen forest in Sri Lanka. In fact, it's among the first 10 major rainforests in the world. I think, a rare distinction that, all of us can be proud of for a country like us, considering its relatively small size. It is also one of the two rainforests in the whole of South Asia, and the other being the Sundarban Reserve, which is shared by the northeastern part of India and Bangladesh. So, yeah, so this is one of the two rainforests, major rainforests that are found in South Asia. And by the time of the independence, by the time of independence, that is in 1948, the Sinharaja forest was one big block of land that extended over 150,000 hectares along the Rakwana Hills. But as it is now, it is restricted to 11,187 hectares only, or 89 square kilometers. There are 3 districts that fall within the boundaries of Sinharaja, and these include Ratnapura, which has the biggest portion of it, and that accounts to about 8,000 hectares. And also Gaul and Mathara. It extends for 21 kilometers in length and 7 kilometers in width. And it has an elevation from 200 meters to 1,270 meters. Next one, Buddha. Right, okay. And Sinharaja receives 2 monsoon rainfalls during the year. The southwest fall in between May and July, and the northeast in November to January. And the annual rainfall of Sinharaja is between 3,000 to 6,000 millimeters. Sinharaja is also important. Is an important watershed of the country, as from it originates the formative tributaries of 2 major rivers in Sri Lanka, namely the Kaluganga and the Ginganga. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, back to the previous one. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, and as you immediately notice in any of the pictures, popular pictures of Sinharaja, and also what you see in this picture here, it is markedly stratified with at least 7 identifiable layers of vegetation. The canopy could reach a height of 30 to 50 meters. And from the ground level, these vegetations include the herbs, lianas, low shrubs, high shrubs and treelets, low subcanopy layer, high subcanopy layer, and the emergent layer. Further description of these layers and the different species that go on to make this are given in the book. Yeah, I think it would be unreasonable if I do not give you a snapshot on the biodiversity aspect of Sri Lanka, of the biodiversity importance of Sri Lanka. Again, you will be happy to note that, our small island is home to 942 kinds of vertebrate species and 1,935 species of invertebrates. which is a very, very big number for a country like us. Of these two kinds of fauna, no less than 1,083 or 38% are endemic to Sri Lanka. And among the flora, Sri Lanka has 3,116 kinds, of which 901 or 29% are endemic. So, my dear friends, so if you walk about in Sri Lanka, and if you come across 10 animals randomly, likely that 4 of them are endemic species. And likewise, if you see 10 plant varieties, likely that 3 of those are endemic species to Sri Lanka. And as these figures are, and especially the endemic rates of the species has made Sri Lanka one of the world's biodiversity hotspots. So Sri Lanka is one of the major biodiversity hotspots of the world as well. Yeah, next slide, please. Anyhow, a point to be mentioned pathetically, though, is that although the country has such a rich biodiversity, only half of the forest cover in Sri Lanka comes under some kind of legal protection, and that is also fast losing. Anyway, I'll come to that. And this legal protection comes through the Department of Forest Conservation or the Department of Wildlife Conservation. But to make that matters worse, recently the legal coverage that was provided to the so-called other state forest lands, or which are called OSF in short, was removed through repealing of 5/2001 and 2/2006 Gazette notification and replacing them with a circular MWFC 1/2020. This brings countries' forest cover under the divisional secretary. So that's the gist of this. These forests, the other state forests that were under the either forest department or the wildlife department's purview, were brought under the purview of the divisional secretaries, and thereby the permission is given, according to their discretion, these lands could be given away for other purposes, like say for commercial agriculture or industrial promotion or whatever. And now actually thereby the country is expected to lose the legal coverage it had for almost 7,000 hectares. So this is a big issue, and the effects of this high-handed and unsavory development are already evident from many areas around the country, which are fast losing their forest land for commercial agriculture and other so-called development activities. So on the forest cover of Sri Lanka, yes, it's also in the same slide. Yeah, the actual forest cover of Sri Lanka is estimated to be 16 to 70% of the total land area. But the governments continuously claim it to be around 30%. So this is the tune of the governments for the past many years. The reason for this discrepancy is that the governments tend to calculate the plantations also into the forest cover figures, which is very wrong. And if at all this is acceptable, that is for the accepted for the plantations, that is only for rubber, which is considered to be the most eco-friendly among the common plantations in the country. Yeah. And on the issue of deforestation, the country is estimated to be losing forest cover at a rate of 1.04% per year. And there is a calculation that between 1990 and 2010, Sri Lanka has lost around 490 hectares of forest cover. Yeah, the next slide, please. Yeah. So this is on biodiversity of Sinharaja. Yeah. The IUCN estimates that 60% of the floral species that are found in Sinharaja are those that are endemic to Sinharaja. Of these, 15 species are supposed to be point endemic. Point endemic to Sinharaja. Likewise, Sinharaja is home to 45% of all land animal species that are found in Sri Lanka. There are a total of 319 species of vertebrates that are found in Sinharaja, of which 30% are endemic and 35% are nationally threatened. Out of the fauna in Sinharaja, 25 kinds of species are supposed to be point endemic. And these include 11 reptile species, 9 amphibians, 3 freshwater crabs, 1 each spider, and a mammalian species. And all 33 endemic birds of Sri Lanka are supposed to be found in Sinharaja. And and out of 85 species of butterflies found in Sinharaja, 9 are endemic and 17 of those are nationally threatened. And also there are 25 species of land snails found in Sinharaja, of which 12 are endemic and 10 are nationally threatened. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. Yeah, for the completeness sake, again on the rich biodiversity of Sinharaja, you get 19 species of fish, of which 50% are endemic, and you get 33 amphibians, 71 reptiles, 150 bird species, 44 mammal species, and 65 species of butterflies. And the next slide is on history of legal status of Sinharaja. Actually, it was during the Sudha's time, the British time, that Sinharaja first received its legal status, and that was way back in 1875, and under Gazette number 4046 of 8th May 1875. And this was provided through the Wasteland Ordinance. And 2,428 hectares were made forest reserve by this act. And on 21st May 1996, this was further expanded to 6,153 hectares. And here I have to mention in between, during the period between 1970 and 77, we got to consider it was the worst time for Sinharaja in its entire known history, when it was cut for the production of plywood and chipwood. So this led to immense resistance and activism by people like two sisters, Irangani Serasinghe and Kamani Vitarana, and the likes of Lindy Silva, who later became the director of the zoo, and Tilo Hoffman, etc., who formed this organization called Rukrakaganno, which heralded the environmental movement in Sri Lanka. And the stories of these personalities, especially two of these personalities, especially that of Irangani and Tilo, are given in many places in this book, and especially the stories about them are dedicated in annexures 2 and 3. And following the change of government in 1977, and as a result of the activism against Sinharaja destruction, in 1978, UNESCO declared Sinharaja as International Man and Biosphere Reserve. And in 1988, National Wilderness Area Act number 3 of 1988 was passed in the parliament, and on 21st October 1988, it was made a national wilderness area. Thus, 11,187 hectares was declared a protected area. The same year, in 1978, UNESCO, or rather 1988, UNESCO inscribed it as a World Heritage Site. Well, friends, I think now we have come to the end of the first segment of the presentation, and hereafter we will be moving to the political aspect of Sinharaja. I would like to take any questions if there are any. And I wonder whether Dulan and Sajiva are also here, because yeah, because even, you know, if there are any questions, even they could, you know, come into, you know, they could also give answers to those. Yeah. So is it all right to have a small break now, or should we? Yeah.
Yes, Prasanna. I think if you at this point once again go out of the share screen, then we could see your colleagues as well, so that we could start asking the questions. So if you go off the screen, please. Wonderful. We are back again. Could you introduce your colleagues to the audience so that we could ask the questions from everybody?
I do not know whether they are. Let me check. I mean, can you help me?
So what are the names?
Dulan and Sajiva Chamikara. Dulan Ranga.
Not quite sure.
They're not here.
I can't see their names, but they may be joined in a different name as well.
Yeah, or else I think, you know, if they're there, they would respond. Yeah, perhaps, you know, they are not there because they are very, 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 very busy people. Even I know right now, Dulan is somewhere in Sinharaja these days. Yeah.
Okay, let's open for a few questions and then get back to your second part, and then we'll come back for further questions. So any burning questions? Could you please identify yourself? And then this is the time to ask any burning questions. So just ask a couple of questions from you, Prasanna. Where could we buy this book of yours?
Well, yeah, this is available in I would say in all the major bookstores in Colombo, like, you know, Vijita Yapa and Lake House and what do you call MD Gunasena, Sarasavi. Yeah, in all these places, this is available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions from the audience? If not, we can move. Charles Kodikara, yeah, you have to unmute yourself. Charles? Yeah.
Prasanna, is it available through Amazon?
Well, no, it is not available through Amazon.
A difficulty is to get book from Sri Lanka at this stage.
Where do you live, Charles?
Glasgow. Up north in Glasgow.
Hari, mata evanna pulang way post eke. Yeah, I will, you know, get in touch with, I mean, through Ruan even, you know, I'll be able to, if you're, you know, interested
Yes,
buying a copy.
I can refund the money for you.
Yes, I'll get in touch with you through
I think
Ruan.
at the moment, I don't know, you know, Lal Gunasekara, who's a neurosurgeon. He's in Sri Lanka. He's here in this audience. That's another. I'll check with him. I mean, I don't know how much of baggage he can bring, but if he can bring few books at least, then we can distribute. But I'll sort that out.
Okay.
So Charles wants a book, right? If there's anybody else, please let me know, and Prasanna can send it through to me.
Actually, a small notice: if any one of you is interested buying a copy, buy soon, because it's going to go out of stock very soon.
Oh dear. Right.
Actually, I might have to go for the second edition. Yes, soon. Yeah.
Ajay.
Hi. Just one question, quick one. 1970 to 77 was Sirima's government. You said the Sinharaja was sort of had the worst time in that period. Was the motive profiteering motive, or was it a necessity for the because that was a low point in Sri Lanka as well, politically as well as economically? So was it a necessity that led to the Sinharaja being ruined?
Okay. Yeah, I will come to that in the next part. Actually, that is the very first subsection under the next part.
Sorry about that. It's okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Any more questions before we move on to the next section? Let's probably move on to the next section, Prasanna. So you have to now share screen again and share your presentation.
Okay. So yeah, we move on to the next slide.
We can see you.
Can you see us?
Yeah.
Yeah. The next slide.
So we can see your screen now.
Okay.
Oh, it's gone again.
Right. So what we need to go to slide number 9. 8, 9. Okay. Right. Okay. So now we are into politics of Sinharaja, the second part of this presentation, and to the biggest onslaught on Sinharaja. Well, I mean, just a small thing, before that. Although this book is about how politics impinges on Sinharaja, or in other words, of environment politics of Sinharaja, in my opinion, it also provides a good case study if you are interested in of how politics and bureaucracy operates in Sri Lanka. Therefore, I request you to identify the political tenor that is emerging from the underbelly of these selected issues that I am highlighting here. This is very important, not only in today's political context, but also in the bureaucratic context, I believe. There are many political issues related to Sinharaja that are talked about in this book, and it would be impractical to touch upon all those during this short presentation. If I'm to identify a few broad themes that cut across many areas related to the environmental politics of Sinharaja, I think some of these may be applicable to many other countries in the third world as well. The first I would identify as the biggest onslaught on Sinharaja, which is what happened during 1970 to 77 during Mrs. Sirima Bandaranaike's Samagi Peremuna regime, and the very purpose or the idea behind this was that time's economic policy in keeping with the government's import substitution policy. So So what the government of that time followed was what is called this import substitution policy. So they wanted to produce things locally, and that led to this destruction. And trees in Sinharaja were fell for plywood and chipwood production. And it is expected that over, actually I can't remember the exact figure, but it's definitely over 1,000 hectares, or perhaps, it could be something much more than that even, during this time. And that exact figure is given in the book, but I couldn't, trace it. And that again was mainly in the more lush southern parts of the forest. And it was the same period of history when the environmental movement sprouted in the country, as we said before. First, which was limited to the English-speaking upper strata of the society. And when the elite environmentalists found that the negotiations with the government of that time were futile, they took this to the opposition. Actually, I got opportunity to get some, first-hand information on this from our, I think, the only surviving member of that time, Mrs. Airangani Serasinghe. And I wonder, Ruan, whether you can recall, her son, the late son, Ravi, was our contemporary at school at St. Thomas's. So I had this, I knew her through this connection, and so I could, access her quite easily. So she recalls, even in the book, it is said that, when they took this issue to Mr. Jayajawardena, who was then the opposition leader, he first wanted all the facts to be put into paper and presented to him. He is then supposed to have studied those facts thoroughly, and with the change of government in 1977, destruction of Sinharaja was halted, and in 1978 and 1988, important pieces of legislation were enacted to safeguard the legal position of Sinharaja, which we mentioned before. To the next slide. Yes, to the next slide, Buddha. That's the same. Yeah, perhaps, right, or it could be the same slide. All right. Sorry. Right. Okay. Yeah. To the next slide. Yeah. This again the same thing. Right. Okay. Now to point number 2, the behavior of intergovernmental organizations. Now this again is a issue that is, discussed quite lengthily in the book. The behavior of intergovernmental organizations like the World Bank in countries like Sri Lanka with regard to the environmental issues. I wonder whether you all are conversant on this subject of international organizations' influence on the third world countries, and to what extent you have experienced this or researched in it in your countries of residence. But with my involvement with the World Bank so-called Ecosystems Conservation and Management Project, or ESCAMP as it is called, first-handly, I experienced how blatant and how conniving, and also at times how aggressive this could be. And this book dedicates one full chapter, chapter 2, titles Save Sinharaja from the World Bank, to discuss this issue. And I would name ESCAMP project as one of the cornerstones of the recent agitations against Sinharaja destruction and campaign to protect it. So this, sprouted the interest again in the country. And in my opinion, a SCAM project is a good eye-opener to all of us as to how the international organizations like the World Bank operate in countries in the periphery like us. At least there are two things that I could identify here. One is the governments come and go, but the World Bank and also, you know, the IMF or whatever the other international or other intergovernmental agencies are, their agendas remain. So the governments will come and go, but the agenda will remain. The other is it gives us an idea as to how undemocratic these intergovernmental organizations could be with regard to their undertakings in the developing world. And about the origin of a SCAM project, yeah, it's given here. Yeah, it had been hatched by the World Bank and the Sri Lankan government officials way back in 2012 and in US, and that was during Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa's second term of office, and was implemented in Sri Lanka in 2019, and that was during the Yahapalana regime. And a SCAM project, in short, is a USD 45 million loan project. It's a loan project to be paid over 20 years at a compound interest rate of around 2.5% per annum. And it is interesting to note that the disbursement of funds had begun in 2016, well before the project taken off the ground. Actually, by 2018, almost 70% of the funds had been released by the World Bank to the government, when in reality, hardly any work on the project had taken place. I think this alone gives you an idea as to how most these foreign loans are being utilized and what the real object of these projects could be to lender and borrower. I would say for the lender, as much as it is important to lend money, for the foreign currency strapped borrower, it is important to have money from somewhere to run its day-to-day undertakings. And for the components of this project and for their shares, there are 4 components. These include number 1, landscape planning and management, for which USD 2.8 million was allocated. Number 2, sustainable use of natural resources and human-elephant coexistence component, for which USD 17 million was assigned, and protected areas management and institutional capacity building component, for which 24.2 million, and the project management component, for which 1 million was allocated. Yeah, to the next slide. And the other key thing that I could identify in this whole program was the vice-like grip the World Bank exerts on the government. This you see clearly when you study the proceedings of the project. The project is governed by an operational manual and an agreement. All the technical details of the project are stipulated in the operational manual, and the legal status is laid down in the agreement. And it is obvious that the agreement completely overshadowed the operational manual. It is stated in the project proposal that under no circumstance the operational manual be amended, revised, or waived without prior agreement. Even in areas of inconsistencies between the agreement and operational manual, the agreement is deemed to prevail. I think this clause alone speaks volumes as to the authority the World Bank commands over the project. And for your information, it is also interesting that almost the same time this issue cropped up in Sri Lanka as a landmark, a landmark legal battle was fought and won by some fishing and farming communities from Gujarat against World Bank in the Supreme Court of the US. They fought against the legal immunity the World Bank enjoyed over the member states and won the case in a crucial judgment that stripped the legal immunity of World Bank that prevailed for over 70 years. The relevance of this to Sri Lanka or other member states is that thereby now the member states are in a position to challenge the biased legal positions or the authority of the World Bank, which was not the case before. The fourth area I would name as juggling with concepts. The World Bank's habit of juggling with concepts. An indicator that was used by the World Bank in this project to justify their entry was what is called systematic country diagnostic. So this is an indicator that, you know, none of us knew. So as this was an unfamiliar concept, we searched to find what it really meant. Then we found out it was a composite indicator that involved aspects such as fiscal policy, fostering jobs and growth for the bottom 40% of the society, social inclusion, and promoting good governance, among a few other things. So it was also a tool the World Bank usually used to recommend countries to adopt their sectoral reform programs. So it was the very parameter the World Bank used to propose opening of the forest reserves and to promote tourism here. So you see the irony of this. So they use something, you know, like nangi pennala akkadunna wage. They show us this, show us one thing, and they propose us or get us to do some things which are, you know, totally irrelevant to that. And again, you know, it is strange that none of the politicians, nor the officials, took any notice about this indicator and its correlation to nature protection. And the next item I would call as juggling with facts, like the concepts, they to juggle with facts as well. And this is obvious when it comes to the World Bank's justification of tourism in the nature reserves, which is an integral part of the SCAMP project. And as a fact, it is well known that over-visitation as a result of increased tourism, both local and foreign, is a bane for the protected areas and the fauna and flora that live there. For example, numerous complaints were made by the activists and were also published in the media in the past of increased vehicular traffic within nature reserves and environmental pollution as a result of that. In fact, cases of animal deaths from vehicular accidents and respiratory problems resulting from increased vehicle fumes too have been reported. However, the irony is the World Bank report, while acknowledging these facts, they acknowledge these facts, also goes on to further promote tourism in these areas. Now you may wonder whether I am against promotion of tourism in Sinharaja and letting people see and study the nature and scenic beauty there. No, definitely not. Please don't misunderstand me. And this book doesn't take any anti-tourism approach. Instead, what it clearly says is that what should be promoted is ecotourism and not the so-called recreational tourism as it happens today and even in Sinharaja. And a word about tourism and visitations to Sinharaja. Sinharaja has at least 4 official entry sites, namely Kudava, one that is in Ratnapura district, one in Nelua in Galle district, Pitadeniya and Samangala, both are in Matara districts. The exact number of visitations to Sinharaja is not known. However, it is supposed to be quite high quite a high figure. And Sinharaja is classified as an area with over-visitation among the nature reserves in the country. Yeah, to the next slide, Buddha. And here we see, this is the newly opened Samangala entrance in Deniaya. And I am sharing this slide for a few reasons. The Samangala entrance in Deniaya was officially declared open in, I think, somewhere in April or May 2019, and is the highest entry point of Sinharaja. It was developed as a visitor entry point by a community-based organization in the area called Harita Mituro. And a special account about this is given in chapter 7. This story, for example, tells us how community participation can be used in Sinharaja conservation and how it could be done for a fraction of the cost that is being estimated by the authority, especially in the SCAM project. Wait. And actually, you know, this is a very interesting picture. You would see, on the left-hand side, you see the structure. So this is a structure put up by Did I? Hello. Yeah, Ruan?
Yes, yeah, you're back again. Yeah.
All right, okay. Did I get disconnected?
Slightly. Yeah.
All right, okay, right. Right, okay, because there was a call coming, right, okay. So this is a very interesting picture. And on the left-hand side, you see the structure that was put up by Harita Mituro on their own cost. And actually, the very opposite, on the very opposite side of the road, there is another, partly built structure, which is abandoned now, and that is what is to be, built by the SCAM project and the Forest Department. So it has got dried of finances, and they have stopped that. But while, for a fraction of that money, these guys have put up this structure here. So I mean, this again is I would like to showcase this as another good example how the one thing how the community organizations, community-based environmental organizations could be utilized in this environment conservation activities. And again, that would happen at a very marginal cost compared to what is proposed by big agencies. Yeah. To the next slide, Putra. Yeah, and again, these are few more pictures of the Samangala entry, and here you may see the wonderful work by this youth of the area. And you may notice, how the bends and precipices were well negotiated by the railings that they have put up. And again, they have built steps using rocks, yeah, and timber. So, yeah, to the next slide, Puta. And among the entry points, Kudava is considered to be the most popular. And in the left-hand side, you see some local tourists in Kudava. And it is estimated that a minimum of 30,000 visitors to enter through this place a year. It was also the hotbed of controversy at the beginning of the SCAM project, and also in the biopiracy case that is described in the book, in the chapter 4 of the book. Mr. Sajiva Chamikara, he identifies the different type of tourists that visit places like Sinharaja as eco-tourists, nature tourists, green tourists, wildlife tourists, hikers, and mountain trekkers. And he observes that most of these categories cause least damage to the forest reserve. However, he questions the possible ill effects that could result from promoting the brand of tourism that the World Bank and Forest Department proposes, that includes building of roads, hides, restrooms, lodges, etc. within the strict nature reserve. In fact, I'm sorry, I had some pictures of those, but I couldn't trace those in time, so I could not include them here. Yeah, so again, the important point there is that Sinharaja, we have to remember, is a strict nature reserve and not an adventure park. So actually, the struggle of the activists today is mainly not against the tourism, but the promotion of or rather trying to make Sinharaja adventure park in the guise of tourism. Yeah, to the next slide. Yeah. Mr. Manjula Karunaratna, a senior lecturer in geography at the Ruhuna University, gives a good account of community-based tourism in the book. He also questions the competency of the forest authorities who are taking a lead role in tourism promotion in Sinharaja. And and another reason why tourism promotion should be done with extreme caution in places like Sinharaja is their hyper eco-sensitivity. And in this regard, important concept or important thing is what is called the edge effect, which is quite well described in chapter 3. And there are some very rare species that live close to some of these footpaths in Sinharaja and also in interior. And these include, for example, Leymadilla. The scientific name is Aspidura brachyrius, and a new to science skink named Lancasincus merrill, which was named in May 2020. A snake species, Rhinophis tricoloratus, and another owl called Paduan Bassa or Serendips scops owl, which is Otus hoffmanni by scientific name. And this again, another species new to science. So excessive visitations and especially vehicular traffic can affectly adverse on these very rare species. To the next slide. The point number 6, what, in spite of, all this, what's happening in Sinharaja? More road projects. And here you see one such, that took place last year. While the SCAM-funded project was a huge controversy that drew the attention of the entire country, there was another road project that followed a few years later. Actually, this started in August 2020, but which failed to gain, that's the interesting thing, but which failed to gain the same political tenor and backing. And this was the Lankagama road project. Here you may see this is something that, I got from the internet. Ranavirwange Dadiya Mahansian, Masa Deken Hadapu Lankagama carpet parlor. So you see the political divide, a clear political divide along the support to or oppose for the project was seen here. And chapter 9 of the book gives a description of the events around this project. And, the politics behind this and the previous SCAM project and the Wilpautu project was, I think it was very much to do with the country's politics and how the majority community perceives this. So Wilpautu issue was important mainly for, at least for some, for ethnic reasons, and Sinharaja issue, that again, I think, was a, it was a very bad project, but, it gained a lot of momentum because it was happening towards the latter part of unpopular government. But here, the Lankagama Road project that failed to gain momentum because for the political reasons, and actually, that was at a time when the present government was performing very well, at least politically wise, because that was the very time, they got almost a 2/3 majority in the parliament in the general election. So you see, now this is another issue that, a political issue that that has, really surfaced, and how genuine some of these elements could be when it comes to their activism. Anyway, I just wanted to share this with you. And about this project, the newly built Lankagama Road project is a 15-wide carpeted road that spans over 18 kilometers from Lankagama to Nelluva. A total of, the importance here, importance of this to Sinharaja is 1.2 kilometers of this passes through Sinharaja World Heritage Site. And it also passes through some tributaries of Gingaga. And while the activists saw this road building project as illegal from the very beginning, they demanded that an EIA, that's Environment Impact Assessment, which is a prerequisite for any project of this nature, to be conducted. Mr. Jayanta Vijay Singha of the Rainforest Protectors Sri Lanka, who was active from the very beginning and who took up the case, even with the president, identified many pitfalls with regard to the road building project. Apart from the absolute requirement of an EIA, he pointed out the wrong timing of the project. It was started during the rainy season, thus leading to much soil erosion. And perpendicular cuts of the banks also made the matters worse. And he also noted that many of the tributaries of Gingaga were polluted because of this action. He also noted that apart from Sinharaja, this road project travels through another reserve called Bellena Reserve, which again is a highly biodiverse region. And this road passes very close to the Gongala mountain with a peak elevation of 1,350 meters, which is the highest mountain top of the entire southern province of Sri Lanka. Apart from that, Gongala is very important for its very rich biodiversity. Venerable Vakandawala Rahula Thero, another activist working for the Center for Environment and Nature Studies, spoke of another aspect, another reason to have this road built in this forest region. It is the growing need for increasing water demands for the Chinese mega projects in Hambantota. This Venerable Thero, he himself comes from Hambantota, so he knows this firsthand. And he also mentioned that as already the Umaoya project has become a failure, the Gin-Nilwala project has become a necessity for the growing water demands. It is expected that 155 million cubic meters of water will be channeled to Hambantota industrial zone through this project. Apart from the water from Gingaga that is used in this project, the new road system is needed for its transportation. In fact, I could say Venerable Thero's statements were very visionary. His predictions was very visionary because it became a reality within a few months. And there was an abortive attempt to build a tank within Sinharaja Reserve, which was thwarted through resistance from activists. And I think, it should also be mentioned here with great appreciation that the former MP and the late Mr. Mangala Samaravira too got involved in this, and he wrote to the UNESCO about this road building project and requesting its urgent involvement in it. Yeah, let's go on with the next slide. Another, the next item that I want to discuss with you is on organic tea from around Sinharaja. It was said in the chapter 5 of the book that, intrusion of tea plantations into the Sinharaja forest is one of the worst insults the rainforests face. This could be seen clearly if you visit Sinharaja. Now, actually, if you look at this picture, the left-hand side of the picture, here you see a tea plantation in the immediate vicinity of the Sinharaja boundary. So it is, it's eating into Sinharaja. Right around the Sinharaja boundary, you see the tea estates. And apart from this, drastically reducing the extent of the rainforest has impacted adversely on the climate in the area. The immediate areas surrounding Sinharaja now experience warmer climate than before, which was confirmed by the meteorological department. The temperature and rainfall figures for the past 60 years are given in chapter 5, which confirms this. The people interviewed complained of the drastic drop in tea leaves yield and other problems faced by them that include labor issues and agrochemical related issues. The common consensus among many was that tea plantation will not be a viable option for the future. Even the budget proposals of 2016 and the National Economic Council in 2018 have suggested that underperforming tea plantations to be taken over by the government and to be reforested. There is also another practical solution proposed by activists like Sajiva, and they propose that the tea plantations around Sinharaja to be made organic or chemical free and market them as a brand coming from the environs of Sinharaja. And the other picture that you see this slide is there is this very famous person called Mr. Martin Vijayasinghe, whom I interviewed to get information about the trajectory of Sinharaja for the during the past 60 years or so, because he lived in a place close to Sinharaja, or in its almost almost boundary of Sinharaja, and he lived there for about 80 years, and he's unofficially known as, or rather, he's known as the unofficial professor of Sinharaja, and his image knowledge of Sinharaja had made him a key figure in a lot of research activities that were taken in and around Sinharaja. In fact, he started his life as a Kitul tapper and later became a guide, and he became a very important figure in environment, rather Sinharaja research. Yeah, to the next slide. Okay. The issue long overdue and immediate. Yeah, only a few more. And among the issues that are long overdue in the Sinharaja forest, one is crucial. That is the 2004 Cabinet Special Task Force recommendation to incorporate all the LRC or the Land Reforms Commission lands falling within 500 meters from the Sinharaja Nature Reserve. This is a cabinet recommendation that now is almost 18 years overdue. The activists keep on campaigning for redemarcating the boundaries and annexing the LRC land. If this materializes, the extent of the Sinharaja will be over 20,000 hectares. Just a word about LRC. If you do not know what they are, the LRC, or the Land Reforms Commission lands, are the lands that were previously owned by the private plantations companies, and the custodianship of these lands were vested under the Land Commission reform since the nationalization of that took place in the early 70s. Possible explanations for this unexplainable delay in annexing the LRC lands into Sinharaja include lack of political will and manipulations by certain sleazy elements with vested interests preventing this from happening. It was said in the book in many places also that there are many who want to keep Sinharaja from extending any further. Some of them are big business people like hotel owners and those who are involved in leisure industry. And others include tea plantation owners, those who are, and also those who are involved in rackets like game meat, even gem mining. There was an incident of gem mining within Sinharaja recently. Then in cardamom and mineral gutter trade. And we came to know that in the name of collecting wild cardamom, a cardamom plantation is run within the bounds of Sinharaja with full political patronage of very high order. All these people have reasons to keep Sinharaja and its immediate environment within their reach. On the other hand, all these elements operate well insulated by the political system and are either direct or indirect offshoots of it. The one before the last item, the silver lining in the dark cloud, or only the time will tell us. One important event took place in the Sinharaja front in the recent past, that again after a long delay, which I would like to describe as a silver lining in a dark cloud. On 14th November 2019, on the penultimate day in his office, President Maithripala Sirisena signed a Gazette notification that was to annex 9 peripheral forests, popularly known as Pitakalle, to the Sinharaja Reserve. Although there was a long delay in outing of this gazette, it ultimately saw the light at the end of the tunnel on 15th November. So which means, you know, it took a year for this gazette to come out with the release of Gazette Extraordinary number 2050/31 dated 2011-2019. Thus, the total extent of the Sinharaja, at least technically, has now become over 36,000 hectares, and this happened overnight with the release of this gazette. While we welcome this development, we also foresee some challenges. The most important of these challenges is the preservation of a large Sinharaja. We know that already there are enough and more lapses with regard to its conservation, ranging from game meat racketeering to various illegal activities that going on within the bounds of Sinharaja, as I mentioned before, from cardamom and vinegar gutter rackets to gem mining to felling trees and whatnot. Today, you may not be able to see a single Vallapatta tree in Sinharaja, as all of them had been logged. So this Vallapatta was using for some perfume production, and Sinharaja was a place which was very rich in Vallapatta growth. So all this was destroyed there. And Annex 4 in this book also identified at least, at least 33 bioproducts that had been pirated from the Indian subcontinent, including Sri Lanka, and had been patented elsewhere. So as it is now, we keep our fingers crossed on this issue. On one hand, we have a larger Sinharaja, which is good. We are happy about that. But again, we know that there are many challenges that we have to face. Also, some activists claim that this victory could be used towards further promotion of recreational tourism, as it is more or less the case today. Mr. Manjula Karunaratne of the Ruhuna University says that the best way of safeguarding and conserving a larger Sinharaja would be nothing but the promotion of community engagement and community-based tourism in the region. To next slide. Yeah. So here we come to the last point, and these are the recommendations that we propose through all the research and proposed in the book, and recommendations, and we expect we expect them to be implemented urgently. And and again, these recommendations are not limited to Sinharaja, and that concerns entire forest cover. So one by one, these include reassessing the forest cover of Sri Lanka through a comprehensive scientific study. Number 2, implement the 2004 Cabinet recommendation to integrate all LRC lands within 500 meters from the Sinharaja Nature Reserve. Number 3, bring strict conservation methods and legal provisions to prevent biopiracy operating in and around Sinharaja and other parts of the country. And number 4, conduct a study on the maximum possible visitation rates for the visitors and vehicles into all the nature reserves in the country. And number 5, incorporate measures to ensure good living standards for people living close to forest reserves and who make living from forest related activities. This one, no? Yeah. Okay, then. Thank you for all of you, and to Ruan and Sri Lanka Literary Society, and also to my daughter Pravina, who helped me a lot in making this presentation a reality. Thank you.
So let me open for questions now. This is the time for the audience to ask any questions. I can see Ajahn itching to ask a question from you. Ajahn, go ahead.
Can I ask what you mean by biopiracy, please?
Biopiracy is you stealing bioproducts and using them in the production of something that of commercial use. So through this, the biopirated companies would make a lot of money. So there had been many items from Sri Lanka that had been biopirated, and the book gives the names of 33 such products that had been biopirated.
And I can see one biopirated product behind Andunagam stream.
No, on that point, one of your last slides was the bracken and the ferns. Are they native ferns to Sri Lanka? The question that I have is there a policy to prevent flora from other countries invading and taking over parts of the Sinharaja forest itself? You know, there is quite a strong policy, I know, in New Zealand and South Africa about imported species taking over their flora. Is there such a policy in Sri Lanka?
Well, not I know of. Sorry, yeah.
Well, that is a huge shame because, I mean, we know in England, if you there are certain species of flora which just destroy land completely because they're very invasive and just destroys the local flora. So I don't know why that is.
Okay, right. Yes. Yeah, I got your point. Yeah, of course, you know, this had happened. I mean, we have experienced this, and in fact, you know, we have very bad experience of this. One such is, you know, this what is called mimosa, or in Sinhala we call it Yoda Nidukumba. So especially in certain parts of the hill country, in Kandy and, you know, various other places in Kandy district, we see large growths of mimosa, and which is supposed to have, you know, come through. I mean, it has quite a new invasive species to Sri Lanka, which is supposed to have come through the machinery that was used in what do you call Mahabali project somewhere around late 70s and 80s.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the audience? Prasanna, I don't know whether you have noticed one of your teachers are here in this audience, Anand Veerasekara.
Oh, my beloved teacher, whom
Anand,
I consider as my...
could you reveal yourself?
Yeah, whom I may have, said this to you, and perhaps, I would have said this to him as well, whom I consider as my best teacher ever.
Anand's son is known to most of us, Akalanka. I don't know whether Anand is here. Anand, we would love to see you if you are here. Any other comments or questions? So, Prasanna, while we wait for other questions, may I ask a question from you? Now,
Yeah, sure.
so
I think even Roshan has a question, no?
Oh, sorry. Yes, Roshan Perona.
Yeah,
Yes.
Roshan has a question, but his speaker is mute. Yeah.
Is it? No? Roshan, you want to go for it?
Thank you. Let me start the video so you can see what I'm speaking with. Thank you. Prasanna, I must congratulate you on a brilliant lecture. It was very informative. And I hope you'll be able to give this lecture to many, many other fora. I wish you all the best with your book as well. I shall personally want to buy a copy of it. And I'm really pleased that you have completed your first run. And I wish you luck with the second run. Rather than a question, I'd like to give an anecdote about the byproducts of tourism that is not highlighted very much. In 1981, I walked across Sinharaja from Deniaya to Kudava. And I spent a whole day in Kudava looking for the Ceylon Blue Magpie. Because a couple of months before, Dr. T.S.U. De Silva had taken a photograph for the first time of the nest of a Sri Lankan Blue Magpie. And that was published in the Loris. And I was keen to see this Blue Magpie. The guy who showed the Blue Magpie nest to Dr. T.S.U. De Silva was there at Kudava, and he took us to the Sinharaja for a whole day looking for the Blue Magpie, and we didn't see one. I was very disappointed. Exactly 25 years later, in 2006, my daughter wanted to go and see a rainforest, so I took her to Kudava, back to Kudava, and we probably walked about a quarter of a mile into Sinharaja when I saw the Blue Magpie for the first time. I was thrilled, really excited. I was taking photographs of him. There was a tourist there. I called him over and said, this is one of the rare birds, an endemic bird of Sri Lanka, and getting him to take. And then there were 3 birds. And very soon there were 6 birds. And you wouldn't believe it. My niece who was with me dropped a biscuit. And then we had like 10 blue magpies around us. And I realized something, that the tourists had been feeding the blue magpies, and they were coming looking for tourists to get fed.
Okay.
This really beautiful endemic bird has become a kaputas.
Okay.
It was really, really sad for me to see this. And I think that's an important aspect of the tourism, that we don't feed wildlife. In fact, that same trip that I did, I went to Yala, and I was on my way back driving along that road past Udavalawe, and there's that electric fence. Every 1 mile, there is an elephant standing, waiting to be fed. Tourists come and buy these plantains and things and feed the elephants through the electric fence. It's really sad. They're not going about their ordinary business. What happens when there's, say, a pandemic and people are no longer coming to the Sinharaja? What do these birds eat then, really? Again, I went to the same trip. I went to the Knuckles Range to Wurzeln. And my daughter was eating a sandwich that she had for her breakfast, really. And she very carefully ate around the rind part of it, as she has been taught, and was savoring the middle part, when suddenly this monkey came, snatched it from her. Now, when you feed monkeys, according to the monkey hierarchy, if you have food, then someone higher up in the hierarchy will steal that food or demand that food from you. And when you give food to a monkey, it thinks that it is higher up in the hierarchy and will attack you, become more aggressive. The more you feed monkeys, the more aggressive they become. And this issue about feeding wildlife is a really, really important thing that we should bear in mind. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very correct. You are Roshan, right? You are Roshan, am I right? Yes, Roshan. Yeah, yeah. You are very correct. You are very correct, Roshan. I think, this, in fact, throws light on the very aspect of, ecotourism and why ecotourism should be different from. Okay, right. Sorry. So my daughter has to come for the rescue again. Right. Well, I mean, yeah, what you highlighted, Roshan, is a very important point, a very valid point. I think that speaks about the importance of ecotourism and nature tourism vis-a-vis the recreational tourism. So I think, this is something that has to be taken to the tourists, both local and foreign, on the importance of abiding to the principles of ecotourism. So this again is a challenge for us. Yeah.
Any other questions from the audience? So probably while you think of a question, I'll ask my question. Is quite related to what Roshan said. So it's the opposite, because I'm just thinking, let's think about a work of art. You have done a great work of art and nobody can see it. Then what's the whole point in, having that art? Because nobody's allowed to see it. Okay, you might think that it's great, but nobody else can appreciate it. So on a similar argument, can we not say that, yes, forest reserves are important, but at the same time, it should be open to tourism. But what we need to do is to manage it in a way that it would not be harmful. So is that the message you're saying, or am I entirely wrong?
No, Ruan, actually, I'm, trying to trace it in my paper, because I was supposed to, say this. I was supposed to say this, but I omitted it last moment because I'm thinking that I omitted certain sections in the last moment, thinking that, I would exceed time. So I would like to, quote something from a person called Roman Husaraski. He's a Sri Lankan, or rather Polish guy who came to Sri Lanka, a PhD student from Poland who happened to be in Sri Lanka at the time of the controversial road building project. And he took part in one of the agitation campaigns, and also he was one of the speakers in one of the press briefings we had. So what he said was, this is mentioned in the book as well, what he said was, the tourists, I would quote his words, the tourists who visit locations like Sinharaja are extremely cautious about the highly sensitive nature of these ecosystems. And he says, a few other things. And actually, at the time was, was relevant to the road building thing. And he concludes by saying, we come not to see roads, but to see forests. So I suppose the message there is, anybody has the right to, visit this place and study this and see the scenic beauty. So that is something we should, always let people enjoy. But the message is, the person who goes there, what is this, famous place of pilgrimage. Katargama යනකොට කතරගම යන විදිහට යන්න. වන්දනාව යනකොට වන්දනාව යන විදිහට යන්න. So I think, that is the message. So going to the nature reserves alone is a Vandanava. It's a Vandanava. If you go back to the history and, if you look at the anthropology, so you say the villagers stepping into the forest is a Vandanava. That's why, he offers something to Ganadeyo or to the Gambaradeyo, and break a what you call a branch. So I think that is the message there. So I mean the overall the wider issue is the importance of nature tourism vis-a-vis recreational tourism. So we all of us have the right to go to these places with right intention and right practice.
Thank you for that. I think, Sati, you have a question. You have put it up in the chat, but this is your chance to ask it yourself.
Let me unmute. Sorry, I'm just unmuting.
Yeah.
As I said, I had been and stayed in one of the eco places. I think it was called the Siana. I just wanted to know, because I'm not quite familiar with the geography of it. And you mentioned there were 3 entrances. I was wondering which entrance was close to the Nellua one.
Which entrance is close to Nellua?
Yeah, because you said there were three or 4 entrances to the
4
Sinharaja.
entrances. Yeah. So Nellua is in Galle district, and there is the entrance close to Nellua is called Duvilialla entrance. It's very close to the Duvilialla.
So there are 4 entrances, because I remember having a ticket and getting yourself checked.
Yeah.
Your ID for entering.
Yeah.
And that was near a place called Seas, quite basic, but quite nice. So I just wanted to know, because you said it belongs to 3 districts, like
Yeah.
and Ratnapura.
Yes.
So I'm just, I know we went from the highway, got out of the exit where you could get out to get to Ventata, but you drove inland. So I just wanted to know where that bit was actually geographically.
Yeah, perhaps, this could be the Pitadenia entrance you are referring to.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
Likely, yeah, very likely it's the Pitadenia entrance. Now,
Because
this is where this, controversy, the most recent controversy erupted, Pitadenia entrance.
Where the road was, because I remember cars couldn't go, so you had to park on the main road, and you go on a tuk-tuk. So and that will take you to the lodge. So again, the same topic you guys have been discussing. When you put a road, that's going to attract more people, because when I went, it was pretty remote, hardly any tourists. It was very nice, actually, very unspoiled. So I'll be disappointed if they are putting a road and attracting more visitors. I mean, I know all of us should have the right to see it, but it's going to attract more tourists and spoil the place. Yeah, anyway.
Then there's another question from Sujata. You want to ask it yourself, Sujata? Please unmute yourself.
LRC?
Yes, please, go ahead.
No, nothing to ask. I just want to know whether it was a good thing, because I happen to be at that stage working with this ministry or whatever you call it. I was not very happy with the distribution. It's all gone now, but just to tell you that. Did you follow me?
Yeah, distribution of what, please?
Land alienation.
I think she's referring to the LRC, the Land Reform.
LRC, Land Reform Commission.
Exactly. I just got that into my head now. Because in the talk, there was something about LRC.
Yeah.
I don't mean anything. I just want to know, because it was not a very good distribution, I think. Some didn't get land, you know, and something like that.
You mean land for,
now it's done and finished.
For personal? You are referring to land for personal use, is it?
No. I happen to work in that commission.
Okay, right.
Long ago.
Okay.
And that's just I want. It's long past, but it came into my head suddenly. It's all done and finished.
Right.
Yeah. I'm sorry if it was not relevant at this time, because you came across that LRC talk in your talk.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, the whole scene there is, apparently, I think LRC is the biggest landholder in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of lands belonging to LRC in the immediate outskirts of Sinharaja. And so these were the lands, one time owned by these so-called crown companies. And subsequently, these were nationalized in the 70s.
Yeah.
And so these lands are now under the custody of the LRC. So some of these lands are very close to Sinharaja, actually in the boundary of the Sinharaja. So this proposal of 2004 was to amalgamate all these LRC lands within 500 meters of the boundary of Sinharaja into the forest, and make all that the part of the forest. So this never materialized. Although now I mean, this again the politics of Sinharaja and politics of Sri Lanka. So this was the decision taken at the highest level.
Yes.
And which was authorized by the highest level.
Absolutely.
By the Minister of Environment then. But following the change of government, that never materialized.
That's it.
With the what do you call the legislation, or the piece of legislation is still, you can't call it a legislation, but anyhow that the ministerial recommendation, interministerial recommendation is there. But somebody or more than somebody are just sitting on it, Nothing is happening. So I think now this is what I said, through this, even through my research, this is exactly what I experienced. I mean, there are so many things that you can keep on moving from one to the other. So I think perhaps for you guys who are living in UK or the other parts of Europe may find this difficult to fathom, but it's a reality. It's a reality here.
The reality.
I mean, it's a very sorry state.
Thank you very much for your explanation. Thanks a lot.
We have another question from La. Are you there? Lal had his share of power cuts.
We had the power cut for about an hour, so we couldn't follow you. Just wonder if you have already mentioned why the name Sinharaja.
Well, I didn't mention, and I have heard various stories that there was a what do you call a man who is very brave and fierce and whatever, like a Sinha. Living in that area, and through him this name came. I do not know. Sorry, I do not know to talk about the historical aspect of that.
Okay, that's fine. Thank
By
you.
by the way, do you know the story behind that?
No, I didn't know anything. That's why I asked.
That never. Yeah. So I mean, it would be interesting to know about that. Yeah.
Okay, there's another question from Jaika. Jaika Vitana, please unmute.
Battery.
That's Jaika.
Thank you, Prasanna, for that talk. It was inspirational. The question which I posed is actually on the chat for you to read. Sometimes what gets the future generations to think about the environment is not reality, but fiction. Do you think there's any prospect for that in Sri Lanka?
Well, of course, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. Yes, and also I think there's enough and more opportunities for that. And yes.
The problem really is to motivate people to create things.
Yeah.
I'll be quite interested if you could give me some connections of some people who might be interested, because I write stories and screenplays of sort. So that's the reason why.
Yeah. You are referring to people. You are referring to people who could be interested on engaging on literary work related to Sinharaja. Am I right?
Yeah, Sinharaja, or not necessarily Sinharaja, but if you create even a fictional forest based in a country like Sri Lanka.
Of course, I can put you in touch with such people. And there is one very famous group of what do you call this street drama guys.
Yeah, that will be interesting. I was thinking in the way of.
I mean, I have seen their street drama, and I mean, very inspirational.
Quite
very good. I can, if you're interested, I can definitely.
I am
definitely put you in touch with them, and even right away. I think I forget. I mean, immediately I can't recollect this group's name, but that's in my fingertips. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking more in the way of bigger players like sort of the TV.
Actually, these guys, I identify them as street dramatists, but they are real professionals. I mean, some of them are they are real professionals. Some are acting in movies as well.
Right. Yeah. Of course, it's not. I mean, these projects need a fair range of people with multiple talent. Directors, producers, and that sort, to sort of make the story come true. It's a bit like getting an orchestra for a piece of music.
Yeah, exactly.
No use writing the piece of music if there is no orchestra. So technically, what I'm asking is for the orchestra, and of course, there's things like funding, because these guys can't, do their work in thin air. Say they need some sort of funding. And that's
so if you're interested, I can put you in touch with them.
Yes, please. Yes, and through one, I can.
Please, contact me through one. So I will send these details, their contact details through one.
Thank you, Prasanna. Thank you very much for that.
Jaika, for your information, I think Rochana has some information for you. Rochana, you want to...
Yes, so there was this TV show called Mihi that went on Derana TV, But I think it's over now. It went a few months ago. That was about this whole environmentalist campaign against the cutting of trees.
Yeah, that I can understand. That's actually, you're referring to news and sort of a
No, a TV series, a teledrama. There's a teledrama called Mihi.
Was it fictional? Was it dramatized?
It was like a film, like a teledrama. It was teledrama basically, not a documentary. It was a fictionalized thing.
I see. Right. Yeah, it depends on how much impact that it has. Now, in that little message that I put onto chat, I mentioned Soylent Green, which is a science fiction film, which, I mean, in our childhood in the 70s, you may, some of you so old as that may recall, it actually showed the sort of the destruction of the world by pollution and eventually all the food chains breaking down. And eventually the only food chain that was available in Soylent Green is man to man, basically in the guise of biscuits. The human flesh turned and given back to. So it created a huge impact, people understanding that this food chain is so important. So like that, there should be some films made about destruction of the rainforest, which will eventually, I mean, I'm not referring to Sinharaja, but just rainforest, maybe in a country like Sri Lanka, which could inspire the world to say that, well, this is what it will lead to if you keep on doing this.
Yeah, I think, basically, there is a huge potential for what you were basically saying. I think, it's only that, nobody had really thought about it.
Thank you. Yeah, trying to think about it now. Thanks. Thanks, Prasanna.
So Jaiki is going to think about that. Any other questions? Oh, Roshan Pereira, is that a legacy hand or a new question?
Request. Let me show myself.
Okay.
Thank you. It's not really a question, it's an observation. So I'm actually seeking Prasanna's indulgence for this. It's a couple of observations about the question that Ruan raised. I think it's really important that people have access to national parks, because that's how we become aware of our animals and birds and what happens in the ecology, and makes us eco-warriors, really. So that's really important. I'm also reminded by some work that some people had done in Sri Lanka by going to Yala constantly and taking photographs of the leopards. They were able to identify leopards by the spots on their faces. And they were able to construct the genealogy of the leopards by that work that they did. My second observation is really Ruan's work of art. If there is a work of art, then it's really important that we all have access to it and we can enjoy it and appreciate its beauty. But if all the time we visit it, if everyone was to have a cup of tea and splash a bit of tea on this work of art, and then someone decides to take a little piece of the canvas away with them, then of course it ceases to be a work of art. So it's just two observations on that point, which I really admire Ruan for raising. Thank you.
I can share one of my experiences with Sinharaja. I think about maybe about 7 or 8 years ago. My children were quite young, and we went to Sinharaja, and then there was a guide with us, and one of my children, I think, ate a banana and threw the peel, and the guide told me that your daughter has thrown a banana peel. Although it's organic, can you please ask her, or can you please pick it up? So the guides are quite good nowadays, especially in directing the tourists in non-polluting the area. So I think that's a very good thing. Prasanna also mentioned the local people taking the grassroots level interest in keeping the Sinharaja quite clean. Prasanna, any observations from you on that?
Sorry, I mean the local people engaging in
keeping the
conservation
whole
of Sinharaja.
Yes. I think the guides are now taking a very good interest. They are making sure that the people they are taking are not polluting. So that's what happened to me. They just said, can you please pick up that banana peel?
Yes, yes. In fact, Ruan, I think, it happens in a very big way. I mean, around Sinharaja, and also in certain other places also, but I'm, mainly focusing on Sinharaja. And the good news for all of us is we see a lot of youth, immediately out of school youth, or even, they could be still in school, very, very interested in the conservation of Sinharaja, and they get involved in these projects.
Thank you very much. Aja, you got another question?
Yeah, my question is sort of partially answered. The question was about awareness and education. I can't remember, I mean, Sinharaja being probably one of our most valuable national treasures, I can't remember being taught about the importance of places like Sinharaja in our school curriculum, but I'm talking about the school curriculum 50, 60 years ago. I wonder whether there is an effort to educate the people, because the people that will protect the Sinharaja forest, not governments. So I wonder whether it has entered the educational curriculum, the importance of our national treasures. That's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think now, say for example, in a country like UK or in the rest of Europe, this may be happening. Perhaps this would have been happening for a long time, and happening in a big way. But again, I would like to say that this happens in Sri Lanka, and even environmental studies is one subject in the primary level studies. So that's a very good thing. And again, I mean, as you said, now had we known about Sinharaja during our school times, say something like this cutting of Sinharaja that happened in 70s would have never happened. No? So in fact, later on, I happened to ask from Professor who Tissa Vitarana also about this, because his uncle, that's Dr. N.M. Berra, was a person in that cabinet then. And again, N.M. Berra is regarded as a kind of a important person in Sri Lankan environmental politics, because of his involvement in this Bhattasti Raja. There is a famous song also about it. Panamure Atraja. So he's the one who took this up to the parliament. No, the Panamure Atraja's case. N.M. Berra is the one who fought it out in the parliament. So so the same guy was in the parliament during the Samangala Perumal time, and who was part of, so to say, part of these destructive activities. So in fact, I asked Professor Tissa Vitarana also, because he been the nephew of N.M. Berra. So anyway, I mean, he couldn't give me he couldn't give me a good answer. Yeah. So anyhow, I think that was the trend at that time, basically.
We got another suggestion from Ranjit Vidiratna. Ranjit, you want to unmute yourself and ask the question? Or your suggestion, please? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a renewable energy person. I mean, I'm interested in the environment as well. And I think the confluence of so many vehicles in and around the entrances to Sinharaja would cause a real problem in terms of air pollution. So, I mean, we could have some electric vehicles in the vicinity. I mean, somebody could, start this sort of thing and then prevent vehicles getting close to Sinharaja and spewing out all this, from their tailpipes. I don't know, this is just a suggestion.
Yeah, actually, this idea had been discussed also. I mean, not that it has not been discussed. And again, coming close to Sinharaja in electric vehicles, is a very good thing, yeah. And I mean that is something to think about. But at the same time, but it shouldn't, go beyond the bounds of Sinharaja.
Yeah,
that's the other thing. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
There was a group who was trying to promote, electric vehicles into Sinharaja.
No.
Yeah. So I think no, that is not something to promote, because one thing, the edge effect that we talked about before.
Exactly. Yeah,
it's such a eco-sensitive place,
Yeah.
So
sure.
Simply, I think the crux of the matter is Vandanave yanavanam Vandanave yana hatiyata yanna. So that has to be that has to be the message.
Absolutely, I agree. Thank you very much.
Ajit, are you living in Sri Lanka or?
Yes, I am in Sri Lanka.
Okay,
yes.
So I'm not. But when I was living in Sri Lanka, we were taught and we were led to believe that the electricity is generated by water, gravitational energy caused by water. And now only we find out that most of the Sri Lankan electricity is generated by diesel.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's why we're having power cuts. I mean, if we had gone in for solar, rooftop solar as well as, say, floating solar, we wouldn't have had this problem. The CB is blocking all this. So that's a very sad state of affairs. So if we had gone in for a lot of solar, and there's so much of potential, we wouldn't have had this problem.
Okay. Any other questions? Anybody else? Any other questions? Oh, I would ask one more question then, Prasanna, from you. Now, knowing that you have already been contesting as a candidate at the last presidential elections as well, is there any cash?
General election.
Yeah, sorry, general, not presidential. Yes, sorry. General election. So, is there any cash in a party like, say, your previous one, the Green Party? And do you think the environmental issue will get you some votes, or if not, is there any future prospects in an independent candidate winning on the environment ticket, as we call it?
Yeah, I mean, not that people are not sensitive to the environment. People are sensitive. But again, I think even when you look at the entire world, I do not know to what extent the people are really sensitive to environmental politics. Now we see that in certain parts of Europe, it has emerged as a quite a sizable force. But I don't say still it is possible to name anybody as a major force, but that's emerging as a sizable force. So I think this comes hand in hand with so many other things, including the living standards of people and democracy and the level of education and so many other factors I think play here. So, I mean, this is what we are seeing, isn't it? That, in the so-called, the developed world, this has, really emerged as a issue, and even environment as an issue is definitely there, and even environment politics as an issue is also people are quite, conversant about, and they would look towards that. But whereas here, I mean, this is our experience. Of course, I mean, not that, I'm saying the people are not concerned about environment, but I think still our politics is, very much governed and geared by patriotism, nationalism, so on and so forth. But I think, now we have come to a kind of a very decisive juncture. Still, we have to wait for another at least 2 years to see, how our voters are going to behave. Whether they are going to shed, at least they are going to shed nationalism and patriotism, or pseudo-patriotism.
I think still the Batpat and the Idam Kal.
Yeah, of course, those are very much there. And again, I think, you may have seen in that slide also, I mean, say Sinharaja, before Sinharaja destruction, before was a national issue, but now here it is not so, right? So because the second time when it was cut, and when this road project came up, it was tied with the popular politics then.
Sam, did you have a question, or suddenly your hand disappeared?
Hans, thank you for the entertaining and educational talk today. I'm not sure I missed some of the talk initially, but in relevance to Ruan's and previous speakers, I just wondering the buzzword carbon collection, is there any financial recoup we could generate from Sinharaja for this buzzword carbon collection? If there's any benefit from?
Are you referring to carbon trade?
Yes.
Are you referring to carbon trade?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't get your question properly.
I think buzzwords of carbon collection have some financial benefit. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it is supposed to be active, but I'm not very conversant to comment about that. But sometime back, I remember this notion was very much there, but actually since of late I have not really researched into this. But anyway, good that you mentioned, so I would I would at least now make an effort to find out what the situation about this at present.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ruan, if I might come in there on that particular point, if you don't mind, please.
Yeah, please.
Offsetting carbon, there are companies that would actually pay people to plant trees to offset their carbon input or output. So it is about new things that are being paid to actually do rather than existing things. So I'm not 100% certain, but I totally agree with you, Sam, that really developed countries who have cut down all their forests should be paying the other countries to preserve their forests for the benefit of the whole world rather than themselves, really. That's one point. The second point is that there are companies in Sri Lanka that are trading in carbon. I know of at least one that is doing so. So people are aware of it really and trying to look at that, looking at preserving forests and working on rebuilding these forests as well, really, that have been lost. Thank you.
I just suddenly remembered a question. I don't know whether you have the answer or not, but just think in the olden days when we look at all these stories, we were led to believe that people living in the jungles, they they were using the fruits which grow in the jungle. Now, I don't believe there's any fruit trees, edible fruit trees in Sinharaja. There may be few, but what would happen if we introduce some, say, let's say, mango trees and jambu or whatever trees into the forest? Would that destroy the whole environment in some way, or would they be assimilated and species would benefit?
Well, Ruan, I think, I have not, thought about this particular question. But again, I think, the answer is, answer is ready-made. Because, I mean, you can't, you can't bring in anything especially to the forest reserves, and you can't take anything out of the forest reserve. It's, so simple as that, because I think the basic science there is the maintenance of the ecology, the eco-balance there. Because I think today's science know only a fraction of this. And there's a lot we don't know. So I think, but at the same time, now this is what I have seen even in Sinharaja when I was doing my research of various kinds of fruits and other even other varieties of foodstuffs. You get the wild varieties there. Say for example, wild cardamom. Then in Venezuela. So likewise, there are a lot of wild varieties. And apparently what I have heard, I have not really, researched into this or discussed this with experts, but apparently the stuff that we use today in commercial basis are once, have been developed from the wild varieties.
Okay, any more questions? If not, we could conclude. It's unbelievable we are coming into almost 3 hours because Prasanna initially said, how long can I take? When I said, well, you can take any amount of time, he said, well, 1 hour was his initial plan. We have now come to almost 3 hours. That shows the interest of people in this issue.
Yeah, and again, the important thing is, still people remain.
That's the most important thing. Yes. So, shall we all show yourselves, your faces, and also unmute? Because this is the time when we want to thank Prasanna. Prasanna, thank you very much for your wonderful presentation today. And thank you very much for spending 3 hours of your valuable time to enlighten us with this important issues. And hopefully one day we will see you as a member of the parliament and doing some good works in Sri Lanka. Thank you very much. Thank you, Prasanna.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, guys. Thank you. That's the end of today's talk.
Thank you, Ruan. Thank you, Prasanna.
Bye. Bye.